start off with just a little bit of just some highlights on what we talked about last week. We talked about the spiritual, the emotional, and the career-oriented view to this scripture that's on the board back here. And we said that all three of them are important. I didn't mention it, but I want to, on the spiritual side, how many of you have heard these words before? And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. Ever heard those verses?
Yes.
What do you want to bet we hear those probably within the next 2 hours? We'll hear them again. If you'll notice, what I want to point out, if you listen to those verses, it's like it's talking about a 24/7 deal, isn't it? So, is the spiritual side of this verse important? Oh, absolutely. But I'm not going to talk about that one today because in this group of people, we don't really have to talk about that too much. We already know that. We hear those verses every week, don't we? And we should know that by now. We talked about personality. Is that important? Yes. What did I say about personality? Don't take it too serious, right? Because God is going to use that person regardless. Now, it's nice to know what your child's personality is so that you may want to tailor your approach in that particular way. If your child is an auditory learner, they're not going to learn well visually. That's nice to know. So you can teach them auditorily. If they're visual, you might want to focus more on the visual, not so much on the auditory. Maybe they're kinesthetic. Well, they're the touchy-feely kind. So knowing those kind of things may help you in your approach, but as far as the end product, don't get too hung up on it. I want to give you a good example. I want to use myself. I know you don't believe this, but I am not just a little bit, I am extremely introverted and shy. Now, I know you're sitting there going, no way, yeah, way. In fact, when I was growing up, I used to tell people I was so introverted I couldn't even lead in silent prayer. I had it bad. I could tell you stories that were just unbelievable, the things I would do to avoid people because I was scared to death of people. They did a survey way back, and they asked people to list the things that they dreaded the most and then rank them. And the end result of that was they found out that the average person would prefer to die rather than get up and do public speaking. People are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death. That's just a fact. And it definitely was true of me. Now, why you don't want to pay much attention to that is here's an interesting fact. Most actors, actresses, you see them in the movies, right? How many of you have noticed those people lead very private lives? Ever notice that? Every now and then you get the weird bird who likes being out in public and likes meeting their fans and just really gets off on that. But have you noticed that that's why the paparazzi are out there trying to get a glimpse of their private life, and whenever those rare moments come that they actually do, they can get tens of thousands of dollars for that one photograph? That's because these people live very private lives. They're very introverted, shy people. And yet their pictures are plastered all over the screens. We find them on stages doing theater. You know where else we find very shy, introverted people? We know them by titles like President of the United States of America, Vice President of the United States of America, Senator this, Congressman that. Those people tend to be very introverted and very shy people. And you say, that's not where I'd expect to find an introverted and shy person, huh? If your child is very introverted and shy, you would just never think that they'd end up doing any of those jobs, would you? And yet, guess what? That's exactly where those people tend to end up. Now, why is that? Well, let me tell you a little secret. I know this because I lived this. Life is an act. Shakespeare said the world is a stage and we're just actors. Boy, did he get it right. And the shy person and the introverted person knows that better than anybody. Okay, we know that. We understand what he's talking about. I think Shakespeare, because he was in theater, was probably a very introverted and shy person. I think he understood that at a very personal level. I remember going to a Star Trek convention. I used to go to all the Star Trek conventions. I'm a Trekkie. And back when I could afford it, I went to every one of them. I've heard all the actors, I remember when I saw Marina Sirtis. How many of you know who Marina Sirtis is? Any of you ever watched Star Trek? Remember Deanna Troi? That's Marina Sirtis. I remember going and hearing her speak. I sat there and thought, that's Deanna Troi? Boy, it's just really hard to get my brain wrapped around that. She has this very heavy British accent. Now, that's not the way she sounds on the TV show, is it? But in real life, she does. She doesn't even sound the same. And her personality? Not Deanna Troi at all. Not even close. Not even in the same world. She is totally different than the persona you see. What is she doing on the TV show? Acting. She has a role. She learns the role. And so week after week, while Next Generation was airing, she would go in and she would get into this role. And in that role, she acted different. She talked different. She did everything different for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days, 6, 7 days a week. She behaved totally different than the person her mother knew. You understand that? Because she's acting a role. Now, for shy people like me, just talking to a class like this is very intimidating, very frightening. In fact, just talking to one of you in the hall is very intimidating. I don't know how many of you have noticed, but if you haven't, I'll give you permission to zero in on me during the time when they say, okay, everybody go around and kind of greet people. I just kind of hang by my seat. I do not like talking to people. Okay? And there's a reason for that, and I'm going to tell you in just a second. And you'll understand why. I'm very uncomfortable doing that. What you see during the greeting time in the church service is the very introverted, shy Ken Graham. You see me the way I really am. And you go, well, that's not the same guy I just taught my class. He seemed very in charge, in command, and very comfortable talking in front of a group of people. And now he's scared to death to say hi to the person behind him? Yeah. Now, why is that? Well, what shy people do is as they go through life, you can avoid speaking to 1,000 people. How many of you have managed to pull that one off so far? Okay, you can do that. How many of you have managed to get through the last year without speaking to one single person? Anybody? You can't get through life that way, can you? You realize for the shy, introverted person, every time they are faced with a situation where they have to talk to somebody, they get to practice public speaking. And after a while, we develop roles. We learn how to act. I developed a teacher role. So when I'm teaching a class, I taught college for 5 years, I developed a teacher persona. It's not the way my wife knew me. It's the role I'm in right now. I'm not Ken Graham. I'm not the Ken Graham my wife knows. No, I'm the Ken Graham acting like a teacher. And I remember one day, how many of you have seen the movie where Robin Williams gets up on top of the desk? Okay, I've done that in my teacher role. See, in my teacher role, I can do anything. But is Ken Graham the person? To get in front of a group of people and talk would scare me to death. And to get up on top of a table and stand on the table for emphasis? Oh, hey, no way that's going to happen. You couldn't pay me enough money. But when I get into my role as a teacher role, and I remember when I first started teaching, I would go into the restroom when I got to school and I'd go, and I'd get into my persona. I actually had to take 4 or 5 minutes to actually. Now, after I did that for about 3 months, I could do it on a drop of a hat. I could switch from me to teacher in a fraction of a second, and I didn't have to go anywhere to get quiet and focus. But when I first started teaching, boy, I'll tell you, the first time I walked into my class, man, I like to never got through that class. It scared me to death. Scared me to death. And I'd been teaching, in the elementary level a little bit, and I thought I was over that. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting here looking at 30 adults. Oh, God. Scared me to death. And then I said, no, tomorrow's got to be different. I got to get focused on switching from Ken Graham, the person, to Ken Graham, the teacher, so I can deal with this. And I did very well. And I learned how to go in and out of that role. You see, I don't have a role for parties. I don't go to parties because I don't know how to act at parties. When they say in church today, go greet people, I don't know how to act in that environment really well. A couple weeks ago, I did make the rounds, and I actually talked to a few people, so I'm developing an act. I'm working on it, okay? Pray for me. But I'm having to develop an act. So those places where I go, where I have an act, then I know I can do that. But where I don't have an act, I'm just a little shy, introverted me, okay? Does that make sense? So the introverted person gets a chance to practice all these roles. Now, the secret to this thing is, guess what? To the shy, introverted person, there is no difference between a classroom this size and an auditorium of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people. Makes no difference. So I can get up in front of 1,000 people and talk, and I'm as comfortable as I am now. Do I have any butterflies right now? No. Am I nervous? No. In fact, I love doing this. Why do actors act? Because they love it. Because they know how to act. They're comfortable in that act. It's a role. And you know why they're comfortable in it? Because there's no surprises. In other words, they've read the script. They know how it's going down. There are not going to be any surprises. Nobody's going to be doing things. As a teacher in a class, guess what? You can hold your hand. I don't have to recognize you because it's my class. I don't have to be any more vulnerable here than I want to be. You understand? So I'm very comfortable. I love doing this because I got my act and I'm in control. No surprises. I can get up in front of 1,000 people, and you want to know something? Same difference. It's my class. I'm in control. I know what's going down. I've run the script. It's my act. So guess what? Most pastors are very shy, introverted people. Why is God able to use them in that role? Because they've learned how to act. But not everybody is introverted. But by and large, most pastors tend to be introverted. But whether you're introverted or not, the way you do these things is you have an act. Most pastors, they don't talk to their wife and kids the way they talk in the service. No. So when he gets up in front of people, you got to go into your act. It's just that shy, introverted people tend to be better at that than your outgoing person. What happens to your average outgoing person? They're so comfortable with small groups, they never get a chance to practice. All of a sudden, they find themselves standing in front of 1,000 people, and guess what? They don't know how to act. They've never worked on that act. And so now they're dead. And so you don't find a lot of very outgoing people doing a lot of public speaking because they don't know how to act in that situation. So that's why I'm saying don't get too hung up on personality, and you're looking at your kid and going, yeah, I really feel God's called them into ministry, but my goodness gracious, they're scared of their own shadow. That may be the blessing. That may be the very thing that's going to let them do just that. If you know my middle daughter, Samantha, she's very quiet and shy. When they've been singing, there's been some times we tried to work her into talking and introducing a song. She does the best job of the four of them. And yet she's the one that's scared of her shadow. Okay? But as she's developing her role and she knows how to act, she does a very good job at it. So I'm showing you how God can take a weakness and just because of the way it works, turn it into a major strength that allows him to use that person in a very powerful position. So don't get too hung up on personality. God uses all kinds. Okay, now I want to talk about the third area. This is the key. This is where I'm going to put as Pastor Mark says, this is the sizzle to the last 3 weeks. This is the end where I'm going to tie it all together. And hopefully I'll get done. If I don't, we'll just finish next week. I'll do like Pastor Mark and just, let's go into the next series. Abilities, aptitudes, and talents. That's the one I want to focus on. And you're going to see why in a minute, because this one is the key that most parents miss. You miss this one, and you can do all the authority stuff we talked about. You can do all the training control stuff we talked about. You can do everything we've talked about for the first 3 weeks, but you're not going to do this if you miss what I'm going to do next. If you miss the talent thing, this becomes impossible. Now, you do all the other stuff right, you're going to end up with some very well-mannered kids. You're going to have kids you can take to any restaurant. You're going to have old people coming up to you saying, oh, you have such wonderful kids. It's been 20 years since I've seen a family as well-behaved as yours. They're going to be great. You're going to have lovely kids, and people are just going to think you're the greatest parent. But this is not going to happen. And you're going to see by the time we get down to the end, this won't happen. You cannot do that verse without this one. One of the things you got to do is early recognition of these things. When I took my classes to get my ed degree, I took a lot of psychology. My emphasis in psychology was child development. One of the things one of my teachers said, every time you turn around, little Johnny is in, he's got the wooden spoon, he's got all the pots and pans out, and he's banging on the pots and pans, driving you nuts. So what do? Well, you put the little lock on the thing so he can't get the pots and pans out. But I hope that's not all you do. And what my teacher said was, yes, you can't have him destroying your pots and pans. They're expensive. But you better log into your little noodle. This kid has an inbred ability for music. You understand what I'm saying? Now, she didn't put it in these terms, but I'll put it in these terms. God gave that child a bent for music, rhythm. Don't let that get past you. Pay attention to that. And this was a secular class I took. And even in the secular world, they say what? Don't let that get past you as parents. Please notice. How about these kids? Every time you turn around, here's little Johnny. What do? You need to put those crayons up, okay? You can't be having him writing on your walls. All right? But please note, you got an artist there. He may only be 1 year old, but you got an artist. There's a talent, and it's expressing. I'm going to make just a blanket statement. If you got a child over 2 years old and you haven't figured out what God put in them and what God's called them to, that you just haven't been paying attention, because it will make itself manifest blatantly. If you're paying attention, start paying attention. Because if you're paying attention, in Mark's class on Signs and Wonders, the book we use, on the back of it has in big letters, it says, God is speaking. Are you listening? See, God will communicate to you what he wants your child to do, the call in your child's life. He'll communicate that to you by the time that kid's 2 years old. He's speaking to you through your child. The question is are you listening? Now I want to show you a way this happened in our own life. One day, have you ever noticed my girls? You ever notice their hair? They love it. Especially this one. Oh, her long hair. Talk about a hair being a woman's glory. My 3 daughters understand that. One day when they were very little, Katie comes marching into the room, all smiles, and Mom is so devastated she can't even talk. Her hair has been decimated. Sweetheart, what happened to your hair? Sammy cut it. We took Katie and Sam to, Cost Cutters or one of those places. And we sat little Katie in the chair and we said, do what you can to salvage this mess. Keep it as long as you can, but make it look halfway decent. So when she got done, you could still, if you looked really close, you could still see some places that were a little shorter than others. But, the lady says, give it about a month, it'll grow out. You'll just trim it up a little bit and it won't. But to make it any shorter, you might as well give her a buzz cut. And Katie was devastated. Very, very small. So then we took Samantha, whose hair grows at about 1/4 the speed of Katie's. We sat her in the chair. And the lady says, well, what do you want me to do with this one? And I said, make her look just like her. This is shortly thereafter. There's our hair cutter. And that's what she was left with. Only this is after it's grown out, because originally it was about that much shorter than what you see in that picture. Okay, what was the point here? You don't go cutting on people's hair, sweetie. Leave the scissors alone. But you know what we didn't miss? This little girl likes cutting hair. God's given her a desire for cutting hair. It's something she likes doing. We logged that. And so one day when Travis, I don't know if you can see him here, well, he decided he didn't want to look like that anymore. And so here's his buzz cut. Do you know who gave him his buzz cut once a month? Samantha. We went and got her clippers. I taught her how to do it, And about once a month, she set Travis down the chair and buzz cut him. Well, then he decided that he didn't want to look buzz cut anymore. He wanted to go back to this style, because we tried this style just briefly, and it was just too much trouble for a little kid, so we went to the buzz cut. Well, he went back to the style he's got now, and we decided Sam wasn't quite ready for that, so we waited about a year, and then we got a couple beauticians, and then when we came here, Margaret Gonzalez worked with her a little bit, and for the last, I don't know how many years now, Samantha has been cutting Travis's hair, and mine, by the way. Katie came up the other day and says, we need to give her a new name. We need to call her Barbara, because she's our barber. She loves cutting hair. The other day she went out, she did this all on her own. We were using like sheets and things, to put around us. She went and bought her own professional cape. Now, why is she cutting our hair today? Because when this incident happened, we paid attention. Oh yeah, we had to stop it, communicate to her you don't do that. Every time she picked up a pair of scissors, she remembered this. She never cut hair again until it was her job to do so. And we noticed that and said, oh, okay. Yeah, okay, we get it. And then you got the area of music. Now, I'm going to be honest. In this area, and I have pictures up here, I'm going to show you in a minute how we missed it. We missed it. But God somehow worked it out anyway. Boy, weren't we lucky. But we missed it. Originally, I started Megan. I've always regretted, I had 3 years of piano lessons and 3 years of clarinet, and now I'm doing really good to play the radio. One thing I've always wanted to do was be able to sit down to the piano and just play for my own enjoyment. And as I look back on it, my mother fought me for 3 years, and I got to the point where I'm very well convinced that had she just stuck with it another year, that I would be able to do that today, but I'm not. I don't blame my mother because I was really being hard on her. And those of you who are mothers, after a while you just say, okay, I'm tired of dealing with this. And you let the kid win the battle. Oh, we already talked about that, right? Don't ever let the kid win the battle. My mother broke that rule, and I never learned to play the piano. And I won. She lost, and the piano went the way. So when Megan came into our life, I said, that's not going to happen to her. She is going to learn to play the piano to a point where she can sit down and play for her own enjoyment. My wife says, but we don't have any money for lessons. I says, no problem. No problem. I got this solved. I got 3 years of piano under my belt, so I will teach her for 3 years and get her to where I am. And then we'll go hire a teacher for 1 more year to put the finishing touches on it. And by that time, Samantha will be old enough that Megan can start teaching her, so we won't have to pay anybody to teach Samantha, and then the two of them can teach the twins. So all we need to get all 4 of them playing the piano to that level is just 1 year of piano lessons, and we got 3 years to save up for it. And so I started teaching Megan to play the piano. Now, of course I started teaching her because I recognized she had a bent for music and this was God's call in her life, right? No, that's not why we did it. We did it for a lot of the same reasons a lot of parents give their kids piano lessons or art lessons or whatever lessons. It's not because they recognize that God has a call on the kid's life in that area. It's because somehow they have a need to have the kids do that. See, I didn't want my kids growing up not being able to play the piano the way I did. That was my motivation. Was that a correct motivation? Wrong move. Don't do that to your kids. In my case, we got lucky. Here's what happened. I began to teach her. Now, she did not have a professional teacher. You understand? She had me. 3 months later, she was playing music that I was never able to play. And that's with me as her teacher. Then we said, no. Playing piano just to the point of being able to amuse herself? That's not what this girl's destined for. Not when she can pick it up this quick. There's talent here. She needs to go further than that. We need to get a teacher. Long story, God dropped a teacher right in our lap. We couldn't have found a better teacher, and it just came right out of nowhere. When God gives your child a talent, He'll provide the training if you can't. You just got to be willing to do it. So Megan starts taking those lessons. By the time she starts taking piano, we're up into like this point. Here's the point I want to make, is as we're coming through here they are singing. This is 1995. The pastor got them up to sing a little song. Here they are, age 7, 5, and 3, 8, 6, and 4, 9, 7, 5. Then we get to here. People ask us, how did your kids So how'd you figure out they were into music? This is the point we always go back to. You ask my kids, when did you first know? They're going to go back to this thing. This is their piano teacher. She's got Megan and Samantha, and they're singing Christmas carols around the piano. This was when this lady finally figured out they could sing together, and they sounded good together. Now, in this particular picture, she didn't have the twins singing with them, but she did have the twins do some stuff too. So this is when we finally begin to say, oh, they have a talent for this. And we need to start working on that. And then we go down here. Here they are a little older. And then we get to this here. They're 12, 10, and 8. This is the Rocky Mountain Quartet Convention. There's about 1,200 people at this convention. They're doing Oh, What a Savior. Katie starts the song. She does a solo. Then they do this. Then she goes into her second verse. It's a very powerful song. This is the precise moment. As I went through the video, I selected this frame as I listened to it because this is a snapshot of the precise moment when I finally said, oh, I get it, God. You want them in ministry. You want them serving you with their music. Because it was at this precise moment in this song that 1,200 people rose to their feet, literally screaming. Within 20 seconds after that, the song was over. Everybody went to their feet. If you think I'm kidding, talk to Rudy. He was back in the foyer, and he said, even the foyer, there were 100 people in the foyer who had been talking up to that point that stopped, and they're screaming. Within just 30 seconds after this frame went by. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I get it. Now, how dumb can I be? Because here we are, Megan's 12. Here's Megan at 5. You know what she's doing? Singing. You watch the video, she's with all these preschoolers. They got them all sitting on the floor. They finish the song that she's doing right there. She stands up and takes a bow, sits back down. Only one. She wasn't supposed to do that. That should have said something, do you think? It was just fun to watch. Here they are performing on the front porch. Still didn't get it. Just minutes later, we're inside. This is Christmas, by the way. They're opening Christmas presents. We didn't have spell Torah back then, but what's she doing? She's got one of these little games, that plays a song. She's singing. Doing a pretty good job of it, too. Do you think we picked up on anything? Then this happens. They're singing again. Do you think we get anything? They do more singing in church, more singing in church. This is my mom and dad's 50th wedding anniversary. Do you think we're picking up on anything? We don't even begin to get it until here. Well, it's 97, so Megan will be 9. So 9 and 7. Oh, we're finally figuring it out. About 4 years too late, wouldn't you think? Now, you got to understand, we weren't raising these kids. This is right after we got the kids. In fact, this thing here happened just a few months after Megan came to live with us full time. So we didn't have any chance to really pick up, but we should have picked up on something right here. That's my point. If you're not paying attention to your kids, you can miss. You see what we ran the risk of missing? Except God intervened and stuck some people in this lady here and the guy who runs the Rocky Mountain Quartet Convention, stuck those people in our lives to wake us up, say, you know what, I want your kids to do something. Now, why should we have noticed it clear back here and here and here? Why should we have noticed it? Okay, here's the point. If God gave your child a talent, why did he give it to them? To use it just for themselves? For his ministry, to serve him. We should have noticed music way back here. If I'd have known then what I know now, I'd said, you know what? God has something for these kids to do in the area of music. And you know what we would have began doing right away? This. You know when we started doing this, what's the way they should go? In my kids' case, music. You understand that? We didn't start training them in the way they should go until after this. That's when we made the connection. Look here, 12 and 5. 7 years. For 7 years. Oh yeah, we were doing all the other stuff we talked about the first 3 weeks, but we weren't doing this. So my point is, pay attention. Pay attention to your kids. They're talking to you. God's talking to you through your kids, and he's saying, I want to use your child this way. Recognize that and begin to train them up in the way they should go. Now, why is that important? First thing you do is once you know the call of God on your kid's life, because you're paying attention, you provide training in the call. Sometimes that can be expensive, trust me, but I'm going to tell you something. If God has given your child a talent that he wants to use, and you're going to train that child in that talent and not a talent of your choosing, do you think a person like this is going to recognize that talent? Oh, absolutely. How many students do you think this lady has out of 35 students who truly have a talent from God? Not very many. You know why most of her students are students of hers? Not because the parents have recognized the call of God on their child's life, but because somehow that parent wants them to learn music. Some of these kids don't have a musical bone in their body, but mom played the piano, and they're taking piano lessons for the same reason I began to teach that one piano, because I wanted her to know. Wrong reason, but that's where most of them are. So what happens when this lady sees talent? True, God-given talent. Do you think she wants these kids? Oh, yeah. So if you're training your child in the way they should go, one of the confirmations of that is these professional people are going to recognize that talent, and they're going to be willing to give you a cut because they want students like that, because those are the kind of students that when people see them perform, get them more business. But why did that happen? Because they're being trained in the area where God's called them to, not where I've called them to, but where God's called them. He's given them that talent. So once you recognize the talent, provide training in the call. God will help you in that area. I know. 2 piano teachers and 2 voice teachers. Later, I know God will help you in that area. You may think you can't afford it. God will take care of that. Now here's the big one. Find ways for your child to be involved in ministry in the area of their call. Very important. In other words, God gave that child a talent so he could use them in his service. Start figuring out what that is. Do you understand that even though that wasn't our goal, that that's what you see happening in these pictures here, and here, and here? See, where are they? This is in our little church. They're involved in ministry. Involved in ministry. And that was before we understood that God wanted them in ministry. We just happened to be in a church where we had a pastor that said, you know what, your kid's got a talent. I want him up here singing. And so this man began to get them involved. He left and another pastor came in and he took up the call and he completed it. And it wasn't because mom and dad were doing it, because you don't understand, mom and dad are in the fog here. We don't get it. We haven't figured this out yet. We don't figure it out until here. But God got them involved in ministry. All I'm saying is that you don't need to wait for God to do it. You can do it. Start finding ways for them to start serving God with their gift. Because they've been called, they got the talent, you're giving them training in that area. Start getting them using it. Now in our ways, if you got a child that's musically minded and you can't serve in the church, guess what? My kids do lots of nursing homes. Old people love kids. Just put the word out that your kids will come in and do a little concert for people in a nursing home. Oh yeah. They love kids, little kids. If where your child is to go, the way you should go, if where your child is to go in ministry, then train him in ministry. Now here's 2 approaches. Most of us have been caught in this. How have you heard this? Well, I'm working on it. I'm taking lessons and all that. And when I get good, then I'll do it. See, that's the adult way. I'll sing for my church as soon as I'm good enough. Let me tell you a little secret. You will never be good enough, and neither will your kids. So that's not a good approach. When I get good, then I'll do it. That's not a good approach. See, what do you want to do? Do you think my kids here sounded anything like they sound today? In fact, my kids listen to these tapes, and they go, oh, gosh. In fact, they're embarrassed. We actually have a video called The Beginning. These pictures are all from that video. My kids, when we go places, this is on our product table, and they sell this, but they really don't like people watching this video because this is what's on the video. They were not good. But the thing is, what's the key? You don't wait until you're good and then get going. You get going and then you get good while you go. So don't worry about the fact your kid's not the greatest this or that or the other thing yet. Get him involved in ministry. Guess what? If he's 5 years old, trust me, there's not an adult out there that's just not going to love it. You don't have to wait until he's good. Do it now. Get him involved in ministry. If that's where he's going, then do it. I want to show you why the talent is so important. How many of you understand that at this point, music is going to be a part of all 4 of my children's lives? Do you think any one of them, when they're 25 years old, are going to be able to function without music? No way. Why? Because that's what God gave them. He hardwired them for that. We provided the training, so now they're good. Oh, man. My oldest daughter, the other 3 are right behind her. They play in churches on Sunday. My daughter can sit down. She's an awesome church pianist. She can play any song they throw at her, even if she's never heard it before. They can open up the hymnal. She's maybe never seen the song. She opens it up and she plays it like she's practiced it for all her life. She's an awesome pianist. Awesome. I got 3 others that are right behind her. Within a year, they'll be right there. Do you think they're going to be able to function without music? No way. What's the rest of that verse say? And as they're growing old, what? They'll not depart. Do you think my kids will ever depart from music? No. No way. Is that verse going to work with my kids? Guaranteed deal. But here's the sizzle. Here's the sizzle. We took this and mixed it with ministry, the service of Yahweh. We did that. Now you see, if this is the talent and this is the spiritual, they walk out, they graduate from your home. What can they do with the spiritual? It's real easy to just lay that down, isn't it? And walk away from it. But they're not going to walk away from the talent. Not if they've been trained in it. Does that make sense? So how do you keep them from laying down the spiritual? It's the ministry part, folks. It's taking their talent and involving them in the service of God, because that's where they're destined to do. So that every time they think of music, guess what? The only context my kids see music in? Ministry. How can they lay that down? Oh yeah, they can, but you know what? They got to pry it apart first, don't they? Now, do you see where the last part of that verse, how that works? You see, it's all of this stuff put together and put together into a unit that is tightly knitted together. So that in order for them to lay down their faith, they have to lay down who they are. They are musicians. Music is their life. It's who they are. In order for them to walk away from their faith, can they do it? Oh yeah, their free will can get in the way. Absolutely. But if that happens, guess what? They're going to have to walk away from who they are. Because that's who they are. Train up a child in the way he should go, and what? As he's growing old, he will not depart. In other words, he will never stray. Yeah, we understand that that's not a 100% guarantee, right? We do have some free will in there. But you want to know something? 95% chance you don't do it the way we've been talking, and guess what? You don't do that, you got a 95% chance they will walk away. So which one you want? You going to go for 95% chance of walking or not walking? See, there's no guarantees either way. But I like the odds this way much better. Much better odds. So combine the ministry part there is so important.